Episode number 110. Here we go. It's going to be a good one. This episode is brought to you by Feels. Do you experience stress or perhaps anxiety or chronic pain, or do you have trouble sleeping at least once a week? If you do, you're not alone. Many of us do. Which brings me to the sponsor for this episode. This episode is brought to you by Feels. Now, Feels is a premium CBD delivered directly to your doorstep. Before I go any further, I'm not a doctor. I don't have any clinical research background. All I can talk about with my experience with this product and CBD in general is it's anecdotal. I can talk about how it works for me, and people reach out to me every time that I talk about CBD. And I'm just going to tell you I'm not an expert, but I will give you my personal experience, and I do use this product specifically quite often. So Feels, this company, is a premium CBD that gets delivered directly to your doorstep. And what does Feels do? It naturally helps reduce stress, anxiety, pain, and sleeplessness. For me, I use it for those last two. I came from a community where if you went into medical and said that you were in pain, you would basically leave with a sandwich-size Ziploc bag full of 800 milligram Motrin. And they're not being irresponsible. They're using the tools that they had available to them. And it was very easy to get, and they worked. And it felt like my stomach was digesting itself. So I wasn't a fan. And sleeplessness is something that I do deal with. On the pain side of the house, I use sublingual CBD from Feels, and I would describe it as one of the most effective pain suppressors that I've ever taken. It's faster than those Motrin that I used to take, and it doesn't do anything to my stomach, and it actually does help me sleep, which is why I said I use it for those last two, pain and sleeplessness. It's really easy to take. You place a few drops of Feels under your tongue, and it feels the difference, and you feel the difference within a few minutes. And if you're new to CBD, one of the things that I enjoy most about Feels is that they offer real human support. They have a free CBD hotline and text message support, if you'd rather go that way, to help guide your personal experience. It works naturally to help you feel better. There's no high, there's no hangover, and there's no addiction. And they offer a membership. You can join the Feels community to get Feels delivered to your door every month. You'll save money on every order, and you can pause it or cancel it at every time. So here's the offer to the listeners. Feels does indeed have me feeling my best every single day, and it can help you too. You can become a member today by going to feels.com/clearedhot, and you will get 50% off your first order with free shipping. That is feals.com/clearedhot to become a member and get 50% off automatically taken off your first order with free shipping. Feels.com/clearedhot. I highly recommend that you check it out, and anybody who's ever reached out to me about CBD, like I said at the beginning, I'll give you my experience on what it does for me. Last thing that I'll recommend is play with the dosage. I found that I need to take a little bit more than I would have thought to really get the effects, but once I found that dosage that works for me, there was no looking back, and it's been amazing. And that is it on the business side of the house. Let's talk about the episode today. Episode 110 is with a professional musician. His name is Gary Foster, and he likes to beat the living shit out of drums, which from an outside perspective, it looks pretty cool. I think I want to beat the living shit out of drums. Started playing music when he was early, started going on the road playing music when he was early. 8 tours. Actually, how would you describe this? Yeah, 8 tours on the Warped Tour. I guess that just sounds weird coming out of my mouth. For 8 years, not sequential, he was on the Warped Tour. Then he got out of music and went into emergency medicine and had some crazy experiences doing that, and is now back doing music, playing with bands like Mest and Assuming We Survive. Crazy, interesting individual. Loved hanging out with him, loved getting to know him, and I'm going to let him kind of describe who he is and talk about his own experiences. So we're going to get right into episode number 110 with Gary Foster. Enjoy.
Okay, got the red smoke. Gun runs north and south, west of the smoke, west of the smoke. Okay, copy, west of the smoke. I'm looking at danger close now. Come on with it, baby, give it to me, I need it. You're cleared hot. Copy, cleared hot.
How's your caffeine level?
Pretty high.
Strong to quite strong?
Yeah.
I like it.
Moderate to severe.
Moderate to severe. You're not shaking yet, though?
No.
Perfect. I want to know about music.
So do I.
Well, you've been playing music professionally. How did you get into it?
Like when I started playing professionally?
Just in general. Where'd you develop the, I mean, when I grew up, my mom wanted me to play a musical instrument, so I don't remember if she picked out the saxophone or I did, but I played for a little bit. But the instant that she stopped saying, "Hey, I want you to continue to pursue this," I stopped. I didn't enjoy it. I assumed that you were enjoy what you do. So how did you find music and then get started in it professionally?
So I started as far as like drumming goes. I was playing guitar and I was terrible, and I'm still pretty terrible at it.
What age did you start playing guitar?
Oh, I was probably like 11, and like I was really interested in it, but once I started playing, I'm like, oh man, my hands are small. This is hard to do, and I kind of like lost interest in it. And then the older I got, like some of my other friends started playing in bands, and I thought that was pretty awesome. And I started playing guitar in a band, and that didn't work. And my buddy was playing guitar with me, and he was much better than I was. And he's like, "Why don't you try something else?" And then I went over to my friend's house, and he had a drum set there. I'm like, "That looks like fun." And I started playing. I'm like, "This is something that I could get into." And it was one of those things where I was immediately interested in it and immediately wanted to do nothing but play drums. Like, it was so much fun. And it didn't feel like work, where it's like, you have to practice this, you got to make sure you practice this amount of time, a week. It wasn't like that at all. It's like, that's all I wanted to do. And it's been like that ever since.
How old were you when you found the drums?
14.
You made a comment the other day saying that you started going on the road playing gigs when you were still in high school.
Mm-hmm.
Where did that come from?
So oddly enough, so there's it's like a party band in New York, and they do like conventions and weddings, and it's basically like
a wedding singer band?
Yeah, but it's like a large group. There's like, I want to say there's still probably like 50 members of this band, and there's like 10 different groups, and they kind of split off, and you're like, this weekend you're playing with this group of guys, or this weekend you're playing with this group. And
it's an interesting business model.
Yeah, I mean, it's been wildly successful. I think they've been around for like over 30 years. So my mom knew somebody that was in the band, and like introduced me, and she's like, you should see if you could audition for this. So I went to their office, and I met the owner, who's also in the band, but he kind of runs everything, and talked to him, and he's like, wow, you're really young. Like, we don't really do that. And I'm like, well, let's give me a shot. And I was like really persistent, and I went in and I auditioned, and they're like, all right, let's give it a shot. And so I played a couple of weddings, and then next thing you know, I'm like, I think the first travel date I had, I went to Washington, D.C., and I played this convention. There's like, I don't know, like 2,000 or 3,000 people at this huge convention, and I was hooked. It was like, that's it. This is what I'm doing.
What type of music were you guys playing?
Anything from like top 40 to R&B. I mean, it was like, it was everything.
Were you in like a tuxedo? I see you in a tuxedo in my mind.
No, I didn't wear a tuxedo. Like,
damn it.
White
suit with tails?
Yes. And a big top hat and a cane. It was awesome.
And so you were in your early teen years doing this?
Yeah, I was like 15, 16. And then,
and rolling solo, your parents weren't coming on these trips with you?
No, but they made it very clear to everybody that I was playing with that I was not to do anything inappropriate. And as soon as we hit the road, I was drinking and smoking weed and just getting wild and hanging out with all these people that were much older than me and much, great at what they do. And it was a great time.
You had the door cracked on the potentially lessons learned in life later on at an early age.
Very early age.
Actually, it sounds like you maybe kicked the door open after it cracked and then just kind of ran right in the room.
Full speed ahead.
Yeah, just tore some shit up in there. So you start there. I mean, I'll let you describe your music career, but I mean, was it 8 years on the Warped Tour? I mean, how does it get to that point? What does that trajectory look like?
Okay, so back in 2001, I had just moved home from Boston. And I was playing in a band with some buddies, and we had an opportunity to go out on Warped Tour. And it was a really strange set of circumstances where this kid had gone out on Warped Tour in 2001, and he wanted to be a promoter. And he had met with Kevin Lyman, who's like the founder of Warped Tour, and was like, I want to bring these bands out. Kevin's like, okay, but here's the deal. If you want to do it, you've got to bring everything on your own. You can set up, you can play if there's a space that we can give you. You know, it may be in the parking lot, it may be by the porta potties. We don't fucking know, but we'll get you where you can get in. You just got to show up. And I don't think he really had a lot of confidence that we were going to be able to do it. So it was my band. It was called Third Estate, and then there was another band called One Year Nothing, and the two of us got together. We put a budget together. We bought a PA and a generator, and we built a stage with like one of those 10 by 20 pole tents and like a drum riser and stuff. And we showed up on the first day in Boise, Idaho, and set up and played. And we're like, this is the fucking craziest thing I've ever done. I cannot believe that we're doing this, because all the bands that I grew up listening to are playing with us, and we're walking around and bumping into these people like, I can't believe this is a real thing. And we ended up doing the entire tour. We set up every single day. And
how long is that tour?
It went June through August, and
so that's not too bad. It's 2.5 months maybe.
Yeah, but I would tell you honestly that it's the hardest tour. If you're not on a bus and you don't have a driver, it's next to impossible with the drives. I mean, it's crazy.
Oh, because you have to perform, and then you guys as the band are breaking stuff down and driving yourself. So,
yeah.
So there's no chance for you to rest in that.
Oh no, none at all. There's no rest, and the day is off. You're driving and trying to catch up with the tour buses, because the buses fly, you know. And it was the best summer of my life. It was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. Well, at least to that point, it was the hardest thing I ever had to do.
How old were you on that first one?
21.
Damn.
And
sitting there playing with your heroes or around in the same venues.
Yeah, and the thing that's great about Warped Tour is that everybody is treated equally. Like, there are no rock stars on that tour. Everybody helps everybody else out. If you see somebody struggling, you better be over there helping them. Like, it's very much an equal. You're treated equally, and it's incredible.
How do the artists like that?
I think they like it a lot.
Well, because there's some pretty, or is the Warped Tour still going on?
No, it ended last year.
There were some very large names associated with that for a long time, right?
Enormous.
That's what I'm saying, and they appreciate the fact that everybody's at that level playing field.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. I would have figured that some at the higher levels of that would have perhaps expected some different treatment.
Oh yeah, that doesn't fly. That's not okay. You get shamed for that.
Shamed.
Yeah. No, I mean, the thing that was really neat is, you know, you'd go to catering, and there'd be bands that are headlining that are standing behind catering like, hey, what do you want to eat? And they'll serve you lunch.
Really?
Yep.
That's awesome.
Yep.
So 21 years old, first time on the Warped Tour for a summer, and you did 7 more years in a row. What were you doing in your time in between?
We did scattered, yeah. So time in between was just independent tours, smaller tours, and then our band built a following, and that band we did 2002, 3, 4, and in 2005 the band split up, and I got out of music for a little bit, and then got sucked right back in and went back out in 2006 with a different band called the Sunstreak, and we had an opportunity to be the barbecue band for Warped Tour.
Yes, you told me to ask you about this.
Oh, this was crazy. So basically, what Kevin does is he picks a band, and that band does what's called the barbecue. And at the end of every Warped Tour, at the end of every show, they set up and they cook for all the bands and friends and family or whoever's there after the tour wraps up and the last band plays. And you cook, and it's basically just like a big cookout and a party. And then you pack up and you go the next day. But there's so much more to it. It was a fucking nightmare. Like so you drive all night, wake up. If like I did most of the driving at night because I was cooking too, so I would still be up, and then I'd sleep during the day. They'd wake me up like 20 minutes before we play. I'd stretch, I'd go play, and then from there, me and somebody else, like one of the other guys, would get in the van and we'd drive to Walmart or whatever grocery store. We had to meet with production every day. They'd give us $400. We'd go to the store. We'd have to spend that exact amount. Anything less, we'd get screamed at. Like you gotta hit it. And we'd buy enough food for that day, and it got easier. Like we got it figured out pretty quick.
Yeah, for sure.
But then we're towing this huge barbecue. I mean, the thing was the size of that couch, and just cooking in all weather conditions. It did not matter, like rain, snow. It just did not matter. But the thing that was awesome about that is that you are hanging out with all the bands, and the networking is incredible.
Yeah, I bet.
You make great friends, and the thing that was awesome was bands would be like, "Hey, can we play tonight?" And like some of my favorite bands would show up, and they would just set up their shit and play, and it was like the most personal, private concert.
At the barbecue?
At the barbecue, yeah, it was killer.
Damn. What'd you do with your year off when you got pulled out of music?
I went to cosmetology school.
Shut up.
Yep. I was like, well, I didn't want to get a regular job. I wanted to work for myself. And like, I had no idea what the hell I was doing. And I'm like, let's try this out. So I went, and it was a lot of fun. It was pretty cool. And then
Was it the Vidal Sassoon Academy?
I wish. And so like right before, so I went through the program, and I'm like, all right, great. Now I'm going to cut hair. And then I got the opportunity to go out, and I'm like,
Back on the road.
Yeah. So my parents were real happy about that. Like, you just went through all this, and now you're going to give it up and go do that. I'm like, yeah.
So 4 more years on the Warped Tour after that?
We did 2006, and then 2007 and 2008, we did it as a record label. We had made our own independent record label, and the guys would go out and sell merchandise. It was called Streaker Records, and they went out and sold Streaker merchandise, and then we would use that money to fund all the other tours that we were doing
Throughout the year,
yeah. And we had some things come up with the record label that we were on at the time, and so legally we couldn't do some stuff for a while, so we had to figure out other ways to make income and be creative so we could keep performing. And then that band took off, and we got signed to EMI, and we experienced some decent success with that. We went on tour, and we did direct support for Chris Daughtry, and did like arena tours. It was pretty awesome.
that's got to be a really intense experience, being the center of attention in an arena with people losing their minds.
Yeah, the thing that's weird is it's really hard to have a connection in something that's that big, because you're so far, especially me, like I'm the farthest removed from the audience. And
Why is that?
just because I'm in the back.
No, why do they put the drums in the back?
I don't know, because we're drummers are the best, and they don't want to take away the attention from everybody else.
Yeah. Actually, think about that. Most of them are set up like that with the drummers in the back.
Yep. Yeah, it's just for sound. Sonically, you got to be behind everybody.
Huh. How much accuracy is there to the partying like a rock star phraseology?
Well, I have lived 2 different lives as a professional musician. One is a partying one, and one is like a mostly sober one. And yeah, it can be pretty crazy and really destructive, and
You see people lose themselves in it?
Oh yeah.
Does his success make that trajectory worse?
Oh sure.
Because there's money involved, I would assume.
Ego, money, all of that. You know, when people are constantly giving you attention and, you know, like women and everybody wants to be your friend. Everybody wants to have some sort of attachment to you. And it's really fun at first until you see through it. But if you're, you know, high or drunk all the time, you know, it's very easy to lose track of that and lose yourself in it. And you feel like you're actually important when you're really not.
Does the music suffer if you go down that path?
Oh, sure, it can. It can. Luckily for me, it didn't. And I think it's only because I did it for so long that I got comfortable with it. But, you know, I've told this story to younger bands before because there were shows that I played that were like in some really landmark places to perform as a musician, and I couldn't tell you. I don't remember the show at all. I've seen video footage of it, and it was great. Like, the performance was fine.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I feel terrible about it because I can't relive that memory and be like, oh, I remember when we played here and it was awesome. And like,
Yeah, you have the sticker on your box somewhere, but you don't remember actually performing.
Yeah.
Which one do you enjoy more? Obviously there's some experiences and life stuff that goes on. I'm sure on the previous, what would be the description of it? Party like a rock star lifestyle versus the sober. Which one do you enjoy more?
Oh, now, like the way that I'm doing it now is way better.
I like waking up not feeling like shit.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, me too.
It's amazing the difference in productivity.
Yeah, I mean, I'm old now, and it's easy to get injured, and it's so important, especially when you're relying on your body to make a living. Like, you got to be healthy, and not to mention, like, I love traveling, and I want to remember all of that. And like, when I get into town, I don't want to start drinking and get crazy. Like, I want to go explore and check out things.
Was the Warped Tour international or only U.S. when you were playing?
U.S. and Canada.
What was your favorite venue that you played?
There's a couple. The Gorge in Quincy, Washington is like one of the most spectacular venues I've ever been to. It's like the Grand Canyon, you know, it's like right on the edge of a canyon, and you can just see for miles and miles and miles, and it's breathtaking. So that's probably my favorite and most memorable one, just for the way that it looks. But yeah. I don't know. I guess probably just that one.
Where's the shittiest place you've ever performed on that tour?
Randall's Island in New York City. It's a fucking landfill, and it's seriously, it's a landfill, and like, you had to wear dust masks to.
Really?
Oh yeah. I only played that one once, and then they moved it off the island the following years that I did it, which was great because
the island, was it actually designed as a landfill?
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's horrendous.
Yeah, it was real nasty.
Oh my God. So how did the first portion of your professional music career, how did that wind down? And then what'd you do?
Let me go back. So 2010, we had done a bunch of touring. We had released our album on a major label. We released the record, came out in Japan, which was really cool. Went in the UK and a couple other places in Europe. And
which band was this with?
This was called the Sunstreak.
Okay, Sunstreak. Yeah.
And our single just did not take off. It just didn't do as well. Like, when our album was released, it came out in the fourth quarter, and it was released. It was competing against Katy Perry, Lady Gaga, Jay-Z. I mean, it was pop music, so that it was in that pop market and pop radio.
Yeah.
And as hard as we pushed it, it just didn't do as well as we wanted. And also at the time, my mom was really sick and was just not doing well. And the longer I was gone, the more I was realizing, like, I should not be on the road. I really need to be home with my family. And then, unfortunately, in 2010, she passed away, and my dad was also sick. He had Parkinson's, and once my mom passed away, everything kind of stepped up and really advanced. And I couldn't deal with being gone, and there was just too much going on. I was going through a divorce, and it was just a lot on my plate.
Yeah.
So I felt like I needed to leave music and pursue something else. So I played for a little bit longer. I did a few tours with some other bands and did some studio stuff, but really just wasn't into it and kind of felt lost. And then um, one of my best friends was like, "Hey, if you're not into this anymore, I know some like I have some family that are in emergency services, and it's really wild. Like it's a pretty crazy life, and you're kind of an idiot that would fit really well into this. So why don't you check it out?" So I did, and I went back to school, and I started off. I went back and became an EMT, and got a job at a commercial agency in New York, and just started doing that, and that kind of snowballed into more and more years of service doing that, and I did that up until 2017.
And I probably should have asked you this at the beginning, but you were born and raised in Rochester, right?
Yes, Rochester, New York.
And that's where you went back to do the EMS stuff?
Yep.
How'd you enjoy that?
I loved it. I mean, it was a great experience. I also hated it. I definitely have a love-hate relationship with it. It was really exciting, especially like at first. I mean, I was addicted to it.
Yeah.
Just because you're experiencing things that most people don't get to experience, and I really relate a lot of it to music. Like it felt like I was on tour. Like you're in an ambulance all day long, and then you get a call, and it's an hour of excitement, and then you're right back on the road, and it's just like playing a show. You're in the van all day. You show up, you play for an hour, you pack up your shit, and you go on to the next one. And it was really easy to kind of compare the two.
Yeah, except for one, you're responding to people's worst day.
For sure.
Every single phone call. I think that's one thing that I think I'm very fortunate to have a lot of friends in the first responder world, and people don't realize that when they get called, it's on the worst day of that person's life. I've never met anybody yet who called 911 to be like, "Oh my God, check out the day that I just had." It's something catastrophic happening, so you have to bear a little bit of that emotional burden as well too.
Yeah, and it's definitely taken its toll, and I've had some bad experiences with it for sure. The thing is like 9 out of 10 calls, really, they are insignificant and really no need for it's not an emergency.
Yeah.
But then you get that one call and you're like, oh shit, this is gonna suck. This is not good. And whether it's the patient or the patient's family, I mean it's a lot to deal with, and it's a lot of emotion, and it's hard sometimes to not get attached to that and not let it get to you. And after a while you get used to it. And for me, after a while I kind of got numb to it, which was concerning to me. It's like I should feel some emotion to this. And
yeah.
But sometimes you just get burnt out because you're just working nonstop and you're not sleeping and not taking care of yourself. And
I think that's one of the hidden dangers of those occupations, because you live in that environment. I think it's like any environment. I see people who teach third and fourth graders. I'm like, you're a saint. I could not do that. I would blow my brains out within the first week.
Yeah.
And to them, they're like, oh yeah, it's totally normal. So you get used to whatever environment you're in. But I think it's probably a pretty insidious environment to get used to dealing with the scenes that you're responding to.
Yeah, I mean, for me, when you're constantly, like, when I became an officer, like I was an operations supervisor.
What does that mean? So you started off the back of the ambulance.
So yeah, I started off as an EMT, and then I did that. And about a year into that, they offered up a position. They were hiring FTOs, field training officers.
Yep.
So I applied for that, and I got that position, and I worked that for a while, and I enjoyed that. I really liked training people, especially people that had like zero experience, because you can kind of mold them into the way that you want your partners to be.
Yep.
So I did that, and then a position for lieutenant came up, and I applied for that, and was fortunate enough to get that. And so I was lieutenant for about a year and a half, and then I got promoted to captain, and then I was a captain until I left. And basically that involved taking calls like a regular medic, but also doing the administrative side of things. You're scheduling, dealing with, customer complaints, internal investigations with, like an accident or, anything related to, employee stuff, dealing with scheduling and the preventative maintenance on the ambulances. I mean, it was 100 jobs that one person had to do. It was pretty wild.
What would people call and complain about?
You name it.
Yeah, but I'm trying to think of.
They didn't like the way that somebody talked to them on scene. You're trying to deal with patient care, and somebody's like, "Hey, can you move the ambulance? You're blocking my car in." You're like, "Are you out of your mind right now?" Or the way that somebody was driving, or just silly stuff that it's like, why are you bothering people with this? Like, we all have jobs to do, and what you're complaining about is really irrelevant.
Yeah, your emergency might not be emergency to everybody else.
Yeah.
A total side note, but when in 2010 did your mom pass?
April.
Mine passed in August. It's interesting, same year. Yeah, like I said, side note, but it got me thinking. Was Comfort Gary around while you were doing EMS work?
Comfort Gary was in full effect.
Where did Comfort Gary start?
Comfort Gary started, it was Comfort Gary for most of my life. And by Comfort Gary, it was a fat fuck for a long time.
So, yeah, we got to give the specs, height, weight. What was your peak Comfort Gary?
Peak Comfort Gary was right before I left EMS. I was 242 pounds. I was on 2 blood pressure medications. Drinking all the time because I was stressed out.
I was just gonna say, I think a lot of that probably is built from the stress of that job.
Yeah, I mean, I was working, about 50 hours a week, but on top of that, I was in school full time. And
you got to talk about what happened with the.
Oh, you could talk about it to a point.
You talk about it broadly.
Yeah. So I was doing that, and I just got up to this crazy weight where it was. I mean, I was out of breath all the time. I was stressed. Like, I just felt like garbage.
Well, you were doing shift work as well.
Yeah.
And we were talking with Nelson last night about, he's on nights, and then next he'll be on swings, and then he'll be on days, and circadian rhythm is not shifting in 4-day increments. Yeah. So he's got the blackout curtains and like the AC to try to adjust when he's trying to trick his body. Were you guys doing that, or were you on a set schedule?
So I was on a set schedule just because of the way that they have the operations staff. So I worked 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., 2 on, 2 off, and every other weekend I either worked Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or I was off.
What was in the lunchbox in the back of the rig?
Oh, I never brought my lunch. I grabbed lunch while I was out.
What would you guys go with? What was the Ambu special for Comfort Gary?
Whatever we could get. Usually I would get a bagel sandwich in the morning for breakfast, and then whatever we could catch during the day. It's hard. Like commercial EMS, the people that work commercial EMS are a different breed. I mean, it's you're just going nonstop. You don't post out of a station. Yeah. You post on a street corner or in a parking lot, and they send you.
What is commercial EMS? Because I'm familiar with ambulances coming out of firehouses.
Oh, yeah. So it all depends. Like, so the area that I worked, some of the volunteer agencies, volunteer fire departments had ambulances, but where we worked, we were like the primary transporting agency, and then there was one fire department that had an ALS unit. They had like a paramedic that would show up and start patient care, and then they would transfer care to us, and we would transport. So with commercial EMS, we would cover certain fire districts that we had the contracts with, but we would also cover like nursing homes, different events, because with volunteer agencies are so small, that they can't afford to cover, a college and an area that's got 20 nursing homes in it. That they'd just be doing that all day long. We also did medical transports, for dialysis patients, surgical appointments, anything that would require
some non-emergency
Yeah, there was
stuff as well.
Yeah, we did a lot of non-emergency transports, and it was very high volume. Like you're going from the time you clock in to the time you clock out.
So you'd go to a call, drop them wherever, and then you just post up on a street corner and wait for your radio to go off again?
Yeah, sometimes they'd clear you right out of the hospital and you'd go right on another job.
Jesus.
Yeah, you're moving nonstop, which is really hard because you're sitting a lot. So it's very easy to become, lazy.
Yeah.
It's
and take the easy or / poor dietary lifestyle choices.
Yeah, you got to eat when you can and where you can. And
well, you're probably going long distances, or not distances, but times without eating. And at least I know for myself, if I give myself a nice good break, I can just eat like a garbage disposal that first meal.
Oh yeah,
power it down.
Yep. And between that and then you're not sleeping on top of that, it's just like
it's terrible.
Hacking on the pounds.
So how'd you get them off? Because what are you weighing in now? So peak Comfort Gary, how tall are you?
5'11".
5'11", 240.
Yep.
Nice.
Yeah, I was a big boy.
Yep.
I was a big boy. Now I'm still 5'11". I haven't shrunk.
Yep.
And I'm 148 pounds.
So damn near 100 pounds.
Yeah.
We'll just call it
I've been
100.
halved.
When Travis came over the other night, he was like, that's half of the Gary that I met. Well, and it was, I don't know, whenever you guys met, or you were in San Diego.
Yeah. Yeah, and I wasn't even big then because I saw Travis before I got into EMS. So I was on tour.
Yeah.
And I saw him, and I was over 200 pounds, but I wasn't anywhere near that.
You weren't near your apex?
Yeah. Like 6 chins. And
you still had more in the tank?
Yeah, I had a lot to go.
So how'd you unwind that?
Well, when I left EMS, I left EMS because I had an opportunity to play music again. And it was a great
While you were doing EMS, were you banging drums in your off time, or
no,
did you totally walk away from it?
I completely walked away from music.
Did you miss it?
Not at first, and then it started to like creep up on me. Because I had like one of my best friends continued, to play and experience some great success, and I would kind of live through him. I'd go see him on tour, and we'd talk about music, and I would talk about music all the time in the ambulance, and we'd listen to music constantly, but I just had no interest. I'm so fanatical about stuff. Like when I want to do something, I have to do all of it, and if I can't give everything to it, I don't have anything to do with it.
I'm the same way. It's been to my detriment occasionally because I'll do stuff to the exclusion of everything else.
Yeah.
To include responsibilities.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's been a balance getting back into it. I think I got it pretty dialed in now, but it took a little bit of time. But when I got back into music, I'm like, all right, I have this opportunity at my age. Like I have to take every advantage of this and not take anything for granted. And I was angry at myself for getting the way that I was. And I had been through, everything that had kind of led up to me getting out of EMS too. I was angry and I had a lot of built up frustration, and I used that anger pretty much to lose the weight and to get back into like peak playing.
You were angry at the stuff you had to deal with the EMS, or with yourself?
Myself primarily. I mean, I was frustrated that, I had some things happen to me that I felt responsible for. And I wanted to make sure that I was healthy and getting back to it. I was stressed, and
Yeah.
I didn't want to feel that way. I felt like shit all the time, and I was tired of feeling like that. So I raged myself skinny.
What'd you change though?
I changed my diet. I stopped drinking.
Which is a huge one.
Yeah, it was big. I mean, I love to drink, and
what was your drink of choice?
Everything.
You have to have a favorite.
I mean, it depended on the day. I like Jack Daniels. Jack Daniels Green Label was like one of my all-time favorites, and then I didn't
even know they made a green label.
Oh yeah,
is that aged?
Or
does that have apple in it?
I'm a Squire. I'm a Tennessee Squire, which is like a cool Jack Daniels club, and I'm probably gonna get kicked out of it because I couldn't tell you what the difference is, other than it's smoother.
Okay.
Than like the Black Label. It's delicious. But I like that, and like in New York, we have some unbelievable craft breweries. So I got heavy into beer and IPAs and all that stuff. And I would drink
I've been told
almost
they're
every
basically
day.
a milkshake in a can,
Oh, yeah. It's just,
if not more. Maybe a
Yeah.
milk with a side of cherry pie.
yeah.
It's I owned a gym for a couple of years in San Diego, and people often discount the fluid intake. I would ask, one of the first things you have them do is basically do a week of an eating log just to get a baseline of where they are, and they'd be very diligent and they would write it out. And I think I would always tell them, include anything that you're consuming beverage wise as well too, and it was often not in there. And looking at the meal plan, it's like, okay, this looks actually really good. I don't understand how what I'm seeing on this paper, and then I look up and look at you like there's a discrepancy here. And I'm like, do you go to a Starbucks? Like, oh yeah, a couple times a day. What do you order? Oh, a venti mocha frappuccino with the extra, caramel twizzle. It's like, oh, okay. We need to talk about that too. It's the same thing with they wouldn't add. Why, I have 2 glasses of Chardonnay at the end of that. I'm like, okay, well, we got to talk about that as well. I mean, I don't drink a ton, but if I take 30 days off, like that's 5 pounds right there for sure. People, I don't think people realize the impact the old fluid calories have.
Oh, yeah. Especially like I was drinking double IPAs and it's like loaded with sugar.
How are you? You probably were sleeping like shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So therefore, recovering like shit.
So I had, I got diagnosed with sleep apnea and I got a CPAP machine. And I mean, it was crazy. And that's the other thing. I'm like laying in bed one night. And I'm like looking down. I'm like, where's my dick? Can't even see that. And I've got this like fucking thing.
Darth Vader mask.
Yeah, I got this Darth Vader mask on. I'm like, what the hell am I doing to myself? Like, this is unfucking real.
And you said you were on 2 heart medications?
Yep.
Were you working out at all during that time period?
Yeah. No, I was lifting weights fairly regularly because you have to stay pretty fit. You're lifting, flesh.
Back and buys, chest and tries.
Mm-hmm.
Swolger.
Yeah. Yeah. So no, I was strong, but I was fat.
Yeah. And so took the alcohol out. What did you change your exercise regimen? What did you change about your diet?
So with my diet, I tried the keto thing, which I still do. It's kind of like a modified keto though. Like I pretty much just cut out carbs and sugar, and I just stuck with like protein and veggies.
Sounds more paleo-ish.
Yeah,
a little bit.
Yeah, but I still eat. Like I love sushi and I eat sushi all the time.
Yeah. I try to eat clean as often as I can. If I can do it 80% of the time, I'm extremely happy because I refuse to be on my deathbed whenever that comes around and be like, I wish I had that piece of carrot cake.
Yeah.
Because I bust my ass and I have to have some let the reins off a little bit or I will lose my goddamn mind.
Well, that's why Grown Up Gary's around, and Grown Up Gary has chocolate. I have like a dangerous addiction to dark chocolate, and I always have a bag of chocolate near me.
Yeah, you're saying when you play drums now, you have chocolate next to you?
I bring chocolate on stage, and I'll have like a couple pieces of like dark chocolate right there.
Like you said though, man, you're in the back. Nobody's seeing that.
Yeah, nobody cares about me. Like,
how long? So what was it? 92 pounds you lost?
Yeah.
How long did it take you to get that off?
It didn't take that long, surprisingly. Like I lost a lot fairly quick, like within the first year, and then it just kind of kept going down and down and down.
What peeled off first, the heart meds or the CPAP?
CPAP.
What was the first thing to go?
That was the first thing to go, and then about a year after that, like we had my doctor had been tapering me down off the heart medication to finally it was like, you don't need to take this anymore. Like, just let's see what happens. And now my blood pressure's low all the time.
Yeah, you look great.
I feel it though. Thank you very much. I feel amazing.
And sleep better, more energy, cognitive state.
The only thing that I haven't been able to do is get my sleep on track. No matter what, I've tried everything. And
melatonin.
Nothing works.
Have you tried meditation before bed?
I have. I've done like mindfulness and
I have not. I was going to say full disclosure, I have not, but I've heard it helps.
The thing is falling asleep isn't the problem. It's staying asleep. I usually wake up like 2 hours after I'm asleep and I'm wired.
Is there a particular thought process you go through? Because I have nights like that will happen occasionally, and I describe it as if I wake up at night and my brain goes through a full revolution on any one topic, I'm fucked.
Yeah, that's usually what it is, and I have I've definitely got some PTSD and
From the paramedic days?
Yeah, so I have some night terrors, which are delight. They're just really fun.
Was it one type of call, or were they particular incidents?
It's usually like particular incidents, like of like, oh man, that was real close, or like I'll wake up and I'm like dodging a car,
Like almost getting hit by traffic, you mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like stuff like that. It's just like little things, like any of like the trauma and any of that really bad stuff that I saw, like that doesn't really haunt me. But like sometimes like a smell will set me off real bad, or a certain sound will happen, and like I got to talk myself off a ledge for a little bit.
Have you ever gone and talked to somebody about it?
Oh yeah. I saw a therapist like once a week for a while, and then I still see a therapist, but it's more for like a checkup and
Make sure you're in the right headspace.
Yeah, like once every couple of months I'll go check in. And
yeah, I'd imagine the volume of horrendous things or close calls that you see has to be pretty high, but at the same time I would imagine you also see some of the most hilarious things on planet Earth.
Yeah, like usually when people ask me like, so what's the craziest thing you ever seen, like I usually tell them like something really ridiculous. Like I don't ever tell people sad stories, like
sure.
It's nobody's business. I'll tell them stories about how somebody took a shit on me, or like, stuff like that. Or usually something that happened to me, not to, never to like a patient or a patient's family or anything like that.
Did that not occur to you on like your last day? Like the day you're like, I am done, somebody shit on you?
Yeah, that's actually exactly what happened. No, like it wasn't my last day, but it was like
the day where you kind of,
that was the day where I was like,
bridge.
I was checked out and I was done, and I had been looking for an out for a little while, but that day was the day I'm like, okay, this is it. We're like, everything in the universe is telling me to get out of this, and this is the final straw. It was just a series of events that were just so ridiculous that it was the sign that it was like, all right, you got to stop doing this.
Did you guys develop or did you, maybe you had it going into it, a relatively dark sense of humor? A gallows sense of humor, if you will?
Yes, for sure. Oh, yeah, for sure. For sure.
That is probably one of the marquee staples of the veteran community that I've noticed, is the ability to laugh at the most absolutely inappropriate things ever.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was hard while you're on the call not to let things come out and let things slip out. And sometimes they did, but never within earshot of something where somebody would catch it.
There was this is how deep it goes. I was not directly involved in this, but I heard this from so many different people. One of the commands that I was at, there's a large jumping phase in the selection process. So you're out there and you're jumping for 30 days, which for me, I had already been jumping quite a bit before that. I loved that phase.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm pretty sure it was Halloween, and the instructor staff decided to stage somebody burning in front of the students. So they sourced a mannequin, and two instructors got on the edge of an aircraft, one holding on each side. And the chess game that went into this to prepare the narrative of the story was deep. It was a varsity level game for sure. And I think the way it was described to me is that they started kind of, bitching at the students about their exit and spacing when the parachute's open, because you're falling vertically, but you need to get the hell away from each other when your parachute opens, because otherwise you're
gonna collide.
You might be facing north, but your parachute can say, yeah, we're gonna go south, or it'll get all twisted up. So you have to have this horizontal separation. And so they started, kind of harping on the students in the week leading up to it, like, hey, you guys, your horizontal separation sucks. You constantly need to keep working on this. So Halloween rolls around. They're like, you know what, you guys, we're going to take an instructor load up, and we're going to show you guys exactly what it is that we're looking for, and we'll exit a little bit lower so you guys can see us from the ground. These two instructors went to the edge of the aircraft. It was a ramp aircraft, one on each side, and they just jumped out holding onto this mannequin, let go of it, and tracked away. So their parachutes open up normally. And then, of course, everybody is in on this except for the students. And this is one of their instructors that's, it's a selection course, so you can get removed from it. But you're also working directly with these people. You develop a relationship with them. You have a rapport with them, a lot of respect. So these two, people track off. And you can see it from the ground. Like, you get hauling ass in the air. They deploy their parachutes, and this, body just keeps falling. And so the instructor on the ground is like, pull. Not that they can hear him, of course. And just right at the edge of the drop zone, good, cakes in. And I've been there and heard an actual human body where it hit. It's loud. I mean, you know what it is. And so the corpsman gets in the ambulance, and they're hauling ass out there. And the instructor, the main instructor on the ground is like, everybody in the classroom, because there's a protocol that you follow. Anybody not involved with the incident, get them away, get them in the classroom. And of course, as they were leaving, they put the students in the classroom. As they were leaving, they just left one of the radios by the door on to the correct channel. They're all going out in the ambulance, and they're like, trying to give, recessive care and all this stuff. And everything goes quiet. They come back in. Main instructor gets up. This guy should have gotten a fucking Oscar. He's like fighting back tears. He's like, God damn it. We were, just basically just hammering at the students. Like, you guys need to learn your lesson. You need to learn from these mistakes. All of you are going to come out, and you're going to look at this fucking body right now, so you never make this mistake again. So they go outside, and there's a stretcher with a sheet over it, just covered in blood. And one of the instructors, they get the students over there, and they rip it back, and there's a guy who's alive, but he has a carved out jack-o'-lantern and is on his head, and he jumps up, trick or treat, motherfuckers.
That's incredible.
And from the way it was described to me, there were students who were like, legitimate. They're like, fuck you guys. I don't want to be at this command anymore. I hate all. They were legitimately upset, which just makes the joke that much better.
Oh, absolutely.
They basically needed to go source therapists for those guys. But that's the sense of humor that, I don't know. I mean, that to me, those are the funniest things that I've ever heard.
Yeah, I mean, you can't take it serious. you can take it serious to a point, but I can tell you that the craziest, darkest shit I've ever heard all came out in emergency services. Like,
I think it allows the stuff you have to deal with to roll off your back. It's a
coping.
Yeah,
it's totally a coping mechanism. And I mean, there's some stuff that I've said, like, right after a call, I'm like, I can't believe I just said that. And everybody, we'll talk about it after a call, and everything comes out, and everything is fair game
around that circle of friends.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's funny how not everybody shares that gallows humor, though.
Yeah, no.
I've told probably a few inappropriate stories at some inappropriate times, and it didn't have the response that I was looking for. You got to be careful with the audience.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, like, some of the nurses at the hospital hear it, and they, a lot of the emergency nurses are right there with us.
My sister was an emergency room nurse, and yeah, she can crack them left, right, and center with everybody else.
Yeah, they're pretty hard.
But I mean, they're the recipients of the people that you're bringing in. I mean, they're dealing with the same stuff, just on the other end of the ambulance.
Yeah.
So you were, even if the music, what do you think you would have done if the music opportunity had not come? Because it sounds like you were emotionally pretty much ready to move on from the EMS world.
I had been searching. I really, it was like looking in a dark room. I mean, I could not put my finger on what I wanted to do because nothing felt right. Like, the only thing that I knew was music, and it was the only thing that I knew that I felt that I was good enough to do. I had searched for opportunities. I thought about, going back to like maybe culinary school. I really like to cook, and I've always been, into that. But then I'm like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to like work and try and start over again. Like, I don't want to start over again. I'm tired of that aspect of things. So I think one way or another, regardless of what I try to do, I would be back doing exactly what I'm doing right now.
Did you even own a drum set anymore at that?
Yeah.
But you hadn't played it in all those years you were doing it?
No.
Just stored?
Yeah. Yeah, I had it in storage.
And then how did the opportunity come about? Because you hadn't been playing.
So, one of my buddies that I had played with in a previous band called me up, and this was when I was still in EMS, but like, right at the end. He's like, "Hey, we're shooting a music video, and I don't have a drummer. Would you be interested in just helping me out and, just playing drums in the video?" I'm like, "Sure, I could do that." Like, that sounds like a lot of fun, and it gets me out of my element. I'm hanging out with people that I haven't hung out with before, and I'm doing something I haven't done in a long time, and I know it's going to be a good time. So I did that, and then he called me again, and he's like, "Hey, we're going to do a showcase. We're only going to play like 4 or 5 songs. Like, it's not a big deal. It's, you want to do it?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'll do it." And so I played that, and then like a month or two went by, and he called me up, and he's like, "Hey, we got a show. You want to, like, a real show? You want to sit in and play?" And it was like right before, it was actually like past the due date that my son was supposed to be born. I'm like, "All right, let's do it." So I was out on leave because, we were waiting for Roman to be born, and I played the show, and it was a sold out show. It was packed.
Were you still doing EMS at this time?
I was still doing EMS, yeah.
Okay.
And he was like, okay, he had a label, and they had a budget, and he was like, "What's it going to take to get you to do this again?" Like, and at that point I was like, "I don't care. I'll do anything to do this again." It had bit, like, the bug bit me, and I was back in, and I'm like, "All right, we're going to do this. Like, this is my out. I'm going to take it." And I did. And which was crazy, like, to leave a stable career that I'm making great money at, and I had been there for a long time, and had built up a wonderful relationship with the owners of the company. I mean, it was a family-run business, and I still do. I love everybody that I worked with. They're incredible human beings, and I would do anything for any one of them.
It sounds like you're miserable, though.
Oh yeah, I was super miserable. But that was on me. That wasn't anybody else's fault but my own. And I needed to do something, and so I'm like, all right, I'm gonna leave this great stable career. I'm gonna have a kid, and I'm gonna just see what the hell happens. Like, that'll be a really responsible thing to do. And man, let me tell you, I got some shit for some people, and you know what? I told them they can all go fuck themselves. I'm doing this, and nothing's gonna hold me back.
Yep.
And I did, and it was the best decision I ever made.
How was it sitting down at the drums the first time?
Hard. It was real hard because I was fat, and I was significantly out of shape.
You were working out of comfort, Gary.
Yeah, I was working out of comfort, Gary, and the music that I was playing was really difficult and very easy to get winded, and you got to build up muscle memory, and it was like starting all over again. It was like learning to play all over again. I had to figure it all out.
How long did it take until you started feeling comfortable?
A few months of playing every day. I mean, I was playing the music okay, but I didn't feel great about it.
Yeah.
And it took me it probably took me like a solid 3 months of playing every day to get to the point where I'm like, okay, I think I can do this again. It's gonna take me some time, but I think I can do it.
That's crazy, man. That's so cool that you were able to find your passion, though, at the end of something, or re-find your passion, I should say, at the end of something that was making you just utterly miserable.
Yeah.
I have had, I loved my first job out of high school, the military, and I thought I really liked the job I had when I was transitioning out, because I was doing it a little bit, I wasn't really doing it a little bit. I was doing it quite substantially on the weekends and the time off that I had from the military. But what I realized is what I liked from it was the money. But I got to a point where I was utterly and completely miserable.
Yeah.
And just one day I quit. I went from making pretty good money, and this is post-military, so there's I'm trying to think if they I was getting my medical retirement at that point because that was part of the process to get out, which is not, it's a couple $1,000 a month. It's not substantial. But that was the only guaranteed income outside of that job, and I was making more money than I had ever made. And granted, you don't make a ton when you're in the Navy, so I don't want people to think I was making millions of bucks. But I got to the point where I had to quit, and I didn't know what else I was going to do either. And that's actually what led to digging into jumping as much as I did, and the first endorsements or sponsors that I ever had, which bizarrely led to some public speaking, which grew. It led to all the things that I do now, but in a very surreptitious path. It was anything but direct, and it was the most nerve-wracking, like frustrating decision that I had made. But I got to a point where I was like, I cannot do this anymore. I quit.
Yeah.
And just went from making what I was to making nothing, and just played a game of pickup sticks afterwards. And that decision was one of the best decisions I've ever made.
You know, leaving, like, touching on that, and something that really weighed heavy on me was I have a kid now, and he is going to look up to me and look at everything that I do and pay attention to that stuff. And do I want him to see me working myself to death and fucking angry and miserable and stressed out all the time? Or do I want to inspire him? It was terrifying, like leaving, like the day that I went and made that phone call and then met with everybody and was like, I'm not doing this anymore. It was really scary, but at the same time, I felt so free, and the fear really led me to work so much harder, and like that unknown was almost comforting. Like, I have no idea where this is going to lead me, but I couldn't be happier and I couldn't be more ready for it.
I'm still at that same point with the things that I do. There was a couple paths that I went down after leaving that organization. Some of them I stopped. Like, I was professionally flying for a little bit. I got type rated in a couple jets and was flying a Gulfstream around in some Citation series aircraft. And it got to the point where the time away the paycheck didn't justify the time away. And I could make more money doing other things, so I ended up letting that go, even though I really liked it. I mean, I crewed almost 3,000 flight hours. The wingsuit base jumping thing has kind of gotten to that point for me. The risk to reward is askew, I think. It's just there's a danger level associated with that. But I also tussle with that one myself because I want to at least set the example for my kids of living a full life and just diving headlong into things. And I do love that activity. And if it did take my life, I still would want to have them seeing me living my life to the fullest.
For sure.
It's a tough one that I go back and forth on. The endorsement stuff that's associated with that is a little bit, it kind of sucks to a degree, the responsibilities and requirements, because it will change your decision-making process if you let it. And you'll do things that you wouldn't necessarily do that can increase the danger because you're contractually obligated to do so you have to manage that. But I still don't have it all figured out, but I know exactly what the hell I don't want to do, and it's going to be fine. I mean, that's the conclusion I came to, is like, oh, you know what? Even if in a year from now everything is completely different, that's okay, because I'll figure it out. Like,
right.
I'll work my way. Like, I'll just keep grinding my nose at it until something happens that allows me to work it out.
Yeah. I'm at that point now too. After so many years being back into it, now it's like, okay, I'm not worried about it. Like, it will work itself out one way or another. Like, and we'll figure it out.
So what's the path looking like for you now? Because I know you're leaving right from here to go. I mean, you're diving back into the music industry.
Yeah. So I kind of, I'd played with this band. Like, I got back into music. I had played, but we really didn't do much. I did some recording and played some shows with them and stuff, but I was pretty much home with my son, and my wife is just unreal, and we can talk about that in a minute. But I stayed home with him and was just doing music out of the house. I was doing some bunch of session work, which I can do at home. I have a home studio. And then
what does that mean? They ask for a specific deliverable and you can crank it out and send it to him. Okay.
Yep. So I was doing that and like playing shows here and there, and then I had scheduled a trip this past summer. I'm like, all right, we're gonna figure this out. I'm a free agent. Let's see what happens. So I had set up a bunch of meetings in Los Angeles and just booked a trip. I'm like, well, I'm just gonna go out there and meet some people and see if this turns into anything. And as I'm planning the trip, one of my best friends in the world, Ronnie, calls me and he's like, hey, while you're out here, do you want to play a show? I'm like, okay, what kind of show? And it was him and a couple other guys had put together this punk rock cover band, and they're all in different successful bands, and they do it strictly for fun, and they're like kind of just for their own entertainment. But the drummer that was playing in the band, his name's Ryan Seaman. He plays drums for a band called I Don't Know How, But They Found Me, and is just on tour all the time. So I sat in and was like, all right, give me the set list. And like, we don't have a set list. So what we were going to do originally is we're going to play, it was the 20th anniversary of the album Dookie by Green Day coming out.
Yep.
So we're going to play it front to back. Like, that sounds fucking awesome. Like, how much fun is that? I know that album since I was a little kid. Like, I can play all those songs. So I start working on those, and then like 2 days later he calls me and he's like, hey, while you're out here, you want to play another show? Like, okay. And then he calls me an hour later and he's like, hey, we got another show booked. Do you want to play another show? So this trip that I went out to set all these meetings now turns into like me just playing all these shows.
And you haven't even done the trip yet, and you got gigs lined up.
Yeah, I got all these gigs lined up. So now I'm kind of changing my plan, and I'm like, all right, let's not take these meetings and let's just go out there and see what the hell happens. So I go out there and we play these shows, and it was just some of the most fun I've ever had. I'm like, this is what I want to do. Like, this is great. Like, I'm playing with all these killer musicians, and I did take a couple of meetings, and that went out well. And then I came home and was kind of regrouping and really reflecting on the path that I was going down. I'm like, what do I want to do? Like, 'cause this was really fun, and do I want to be a session musician? Do I want to tour? Like, what do I want to do? So then Adrian Estrella, who is the singer in the punk rock band, in the Green Day band, calls me and he's like, hey, our drummer in my band, he plays in a band called Assuming We Survive. He's like, our drummer isn't available to do this tour. Would you be interested in doing it? I'm like, yeah, yes, you got it. What do I need to do? So I got the music. I started, working on the songs, and next thing you know, I'm doing this tour. And on top of that tour, we booked more of these Green Day shows, but instead of just doing Green Day, we put together like the dream set list of like, hey, if you could play any of your favorite music, what would it be? And I mean, it was just boner jams. Like, it was fucking jams. Like every song that I wanted to play when I was a kid, but I couldn't because I was too shitty, or the people that I were playing with weren't capable of playing the music. These guys are all animals, and they can all do it. And we just nailed these songs. I mean, they sounded awesome, and we had a great time, and we still do it. The band's called Welcome to Paradise, and it's kind of like a rotating incestual pool of musicians, and we just kind of rotate in and out and play shows in between. Like, when I fly out to Los Angeles to kick off a tour, we'll do like one or two shows before the tour, and then I come home, and when we get off the tour, we'll usually do a show to kind of wrap things all up. And
what a perfect name for musicians that are coming together to play their favorite music.
Yeah, I mean, it couldn't be more perfect.
Yeah.
And yeah, so we do that, and then getting back to this other tour. So I went out in October and November with the Assuming We Survive, and this other band from Canada called We Were Sharks, and a band called Never Loved. And we did a full U.S. Canada tour, and it was one of the most fun tours I ever had. There was no egos. It was like 20 dudes who, it was like summer camp. It was all, like a sleepover every night where you're like, everybody's been playing Nintendo, drinking Mountain Dew, and then you're watching scrambled porn, It's like,
Jesus.
I think that's a titty. Yeah. It was like that every night. We were just laughing the whole tour.
And grown-up Gary was there this time.
And it was grown-up Gary. Yeah. So, grown-up, semi-sober Gary. And, we had a great time. We saw some beautiful places, met some amazing people, played with some great bands. And then I'm going back out with Assuming We Survive in like 2 weeks. And we're doing more of a West Coast run. It's like 15 dates scattered all over the place with a band called The Classic Crime.
For it, a bunch of the bands that you've talked about, and then I'm sure a bunch of the bands are on the Warped Tour as well too. What is it that takes a band like Assuming We Survive and gets them to the great English of Metallica? Like it seems like there's these tiers or levels. Is it that you just get?
Yeah, it's kind of like grades.
Is it you get like a massive hit and then you're recognized from that, or what's the biggest difference between those levels?
I think it's very specific to the band. Some bands will have never toured before, and they'll release music and the music has just taken off, and next thing you know, this band is out killing it, but they have like no touring experience and they're playing, big arenas or larger venues right off the bat. I would say for most bands, it's a grind. It's a thankless grind that you're constantly doing it. And if you're lucky enough to continue to do it, you can kind of you build it up by touring, and it may start off as an independent tour, and then you may make friends with a band that has bigger than you, and they'll take you out, and then so you do that circuit, and then you build those relationships with promoters and fans, and now, like when I was originally like in the Sunstreak, Facebook was kind of a thing. It was all MySpace. It's nothing like it is now.
Yeah.
Like, so promoting was much different. It was much more difficult, and it was a lot harder to get heard and seen, where now it's so much easier to get exposure and to reach out to people. Like when I started to kind of search to find bands that I wanted to play with and get work, I just used Instagram. I couldn't believe how awesome it was to just connect with people just by messaging them,
And they just get back to you, and the next thing you know,
sometimes. So what worked for me was I just started making drum videos, and was like, I'm just gonna play what I want to play and see what happens. And then it was like, maybe if I played this music and sent it to the people that wrote the music, maybe that would lead to something. And or at least, build a relationship with that person. And it has, I've made some really amazing connections from that, and that's gotten me some really cool gigs and some great opportunities, which I wouldn't have any other way. And just by using the internet, where before it was all face-to-face stuff, and, you had to know somebody, but
an actual physical connection as opposed to the ethereal or whatever you would describe the connection as online. What advice would you give to somebody who wants to be doing what you're doing professionally?
Well, I would give you two different ones, depending on how I'm feeling. Either no, don't do it, like it's the dumbest thing you'll ever do, or it's really crazy and really difficult, and if you're crazy enough and stupid enough to do it, like, just give it everything that you have. Be ready to be rejected and disappointed and sad and frustrated, but it's worth every bit of it. And like that, the experience is like leading up to any sort of success is the most fun. Anything that I have ever, like any success that I've ever experienced, leading up to that was the most fun. Like the grind and man, I tell you some fucking horror stories about that.
That's the part I think a lot of people miss, though. They see the peaks and they miss the valleys, but it's the valleys that make the peaks so delicious.
Yeah. I mean, and the peaks are short.
Yeah.
You know, they're there, and then you're like, all right, what's next? You know, it's immediately what's next. It's very short-lived. So
I'd have to imagine for every Metallica, there's got to be 10,000 bands out there trying to become the next Metallica.
100,000 bands. Yeah.
That doesn't surprise me at all.
It's nuts. Yeah. Funny enough, like a very good friend of mine is the guy that signed and discovered Metallica, and he signed him to Elektra Records, and he found Kill 'Em All, which was recorded in Rochester, New York. He found it in a garage sale and was like, what the fuck? This band is unreal. And brought him in and signed him. And there's a great documentary on Netflix called Who the Fuck Is That Guy? His name's Michael Alago, and it's all about that. And he signed White Zombie and Metal Church. And
How do you find all these people?
he's, I don't know, he's a wizard.
He's got golden ears.
Yeah, he does have golden ears. He was a kid when he found them too. He was like, I think he was like 17 or 18 years old. Like he was young.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
When do you guys think you'll land here in Montana permanently?
I'm ready now.
That question's just for Crystal.
I know.
In case she listens to this and gets pissed.
I know. Well, she's already lived here. She's already had that opportunity. Briefly, I know. I mean, as much as I love Rochester, I'm not a big fan of the state and how expensive it is and all the horrendous stuff that's starting to happen there with all these new laws, and it's really ridiculous.
Yeah, it seems like the coasts are getting a little bit crazy. The coastal states, at least.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, we moved here from San Diego, and I'll be honest with you, I don't think I have spent more than 2 or 3 minutes thinking about San Diego since we came up here.
Yeah, I mean, this place is unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's just so spectacular, and I'm like, you don't need to look at your phone. You don't care about what else is going on in the world. It's just, you're just here existing, and it makes you realize how insignificant you are, you know?
Yes, I have that realization often.
But I could imagine if I lived out here, just how productive I'd be creatively, and, you know, just not having any distractions. And it's
the move out here, you know, what I was saying earlier, getting to the space where I realized that it's going to be okay regardless of what happens. The move out here and the space and the change in my mentality, I think, came from that geographic change. It did. And the slower, it's a palpably slower pace of life. And I don't mean like we live in a podunk town. I mean, you have every convenience you could possibly want. It's just...
No, you don't.
Well,
you don't have Wegmans, bro.
I don't even know what Wegmans is. You don't have Costco, so I don't want to hear it.
We have Costco.
You don't have a Costco.
I just don't have a membership.
That's fine. So you don't have Costco. Might as well not exist in New York. But I'll see more people when I fly through LAX in one terminal than I will see in a week.
Yeah.
Here. And that, it just changes. It's just kind of like a... when I get... And that for me is drastically helped just my decision-making process in the way. It's like, okay, we're going to be fine.
Yeah.
Everything's going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny, every time I'll post a picture about Montana, or it's usually just a picture with the hashtag, it says Montana, and people will hit me up from Montana like, stop fucking doing that. We have enough people.
This is a secret. You're giving it away. Yeah, I get that for
we
sure.
We only want the good ones. And I'll write back sometimes, who gets to decide who the good ones are?
Yeah, where'd you come from? Like, because you gotta imagine that a good chunk of those people moved out here, right?
I've had interaction, it probably was about a month ago. Somebody was they were bitching about California transplants. And then later on in the conversation, come to find out that they were from California. Granted, 30 years ago, but they thought that somehow removed the fact that they also came from the exact same place that the people that they were bitching about came from. It was awesome.
They just need to unfuck themselves. Like,
awesome.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's like, I was like, you guys obviously were, born and raised in Montana. They're like, no, man, we're just from, northern Los Angeles. What are you talking about?
Yeah, what gives you the right to say that? Like,
yeah, well, we've lived here for 30 years. I'm like, doesn't mean you're from here.
Right.
That shit doesn't work that way.
No.
Well, that's awesome, man. It's I'm going to take you up on your offer. I'm going to come up and see some Grown Up Gary on tour smashing some drums.
Oh, it'd be so much fun. It really, it's...
Where would be the best place to join up with you guys?
I have to see, because I know there's some tours coming up. I don't know, like necessarily like where they start or where they finish, but the coast tours are great. Like West Coast, East Coast tours are really fun. Mainly because the drives are a lot shorter.
That makes
So,
sense.
where you're not like, this last tour that we went on, we went from Orlando to Austin, and that was, a full like 2 days of driving with the stop in New Orleans.
Texas will take you a day.
Oh, easily.
People don't know how big
Easily.
Texas is till they try to drive across the long axis of that thing.
Every time I'm in Texas, it's just like, fuck, we're on Mars. Like,
Yeah.
you're just, it takes forever. But
yeah, I will take you up on that. I will come for sure, see a live show. Now that I'm pretty seasoned when it comes to concerts. In 42 years, I've been to one.
yeah. Yeah, well, that's a good thing though, because we can do it right. We could do it right. But then, you gotta keep it up.
Can I play the cowbell?
You can play whatever you want. You can play drums.
I don't want to do. Well, I don't know how to play drums. I mean, I'm assuming I could smash the sticks onto the drums, but I could. I'd rather just do the cowbell skit.
If I can play drums, anybody can play drums. 'Cause I'm a fucking idiot.
Well, you've been playing drums for decades, so I'll just
Oh,
do the
man,
Will
it makes me feel
Ferrell
old.
cowbell.
Yeah, just put your nuts on my drum set.
Just ching 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 ching. Yeah. Well, hell yeah, man. Let's call it a wrap because we got to get up early as it is anyway.
It's true.
Thank you for taking the time. I actually find it's fascinating to see somebody start off with their passion, navigate out of it, and find their way back. To me, that stuff's fascinating. And the valleys, to me, are much more important than the peaks as it is. So,
Definitely.
closing thoughts are yours. What do you want to close with?
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate all of this. And this trip was an incredible experience. And it was nice to clear my head before I fly to California in the morning and get back to work. And I cannot wait to move out here.
That's it. We should close on that. Crystal,
All right.
hope you heard that. That's all for this week, everybody. If you made it this far and are still listening, thank you very much. Thank you for those who have gone onto iTunes and reviewed the podcast. And then the last thing I can say is today I'm going to pick up the brand new merchandise and apparel. Not merchandise, actually. Well, I don't know the difference between merchandise or what qualifies as merchandise because technically I'm selling it. T-shirts and sweatshirts for the podcast. Jesus. I'm going to pick them up today, and they're going to be uploaded onto the website this week. New colors, a little bit of black on black subdued action, new colorways, new T-shirt, new sweatshirt design. I think they're going to be awesome. So, more than anything, I will make a post about that on social media, so you don't have to wait until the last 40 seconds of a podcast to find out if, in fact, you even give a shit. And that's it for this week. I'll see you next week. Hope you have a good one.